Hey, it's me, Julia. Some of you may have never seen my face before, so here I am. This is for Miss Carnes' English class. So, I'm supposed to be doing a video book talk, and so here it is. It's The Naming by Alison Croggon. It's an amazing book, I have to tell you, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so this book is about a girl in this is a fantasy world sort of thing. Her name's Mayrad. She's a slave in a desperate and unforgiving settlement. And she knows very little of her past, because her family was destroyed in war, and then she was taken to her settlement and enslaved. She is unaware that she possesses a powerful gift, one that marks her as a member of the School of Pelennor. And it is only when she is discovered by Cadman, who is one of the great bards of Lyragon, that her true heritage and extraordinary destiny unfold. Now she and her new teacher, Cadman, must survive a journey through a time and a place where the dark forces they battle stem from the deepest recesses of otherworldly terror. Ooh! Alright. So that's basically the blurb. And I'm going to read you a paragraph or two just to kind of show off the writing of Alison Croggon. Okay. Oh, also, it's so cool. This is very Lord of the Rings-ish and Aragon-ish. They have a pronunciation guide, in the book, so you know how to say stuff. It's pretty great. This is a really long book, so if you don't like reading long books, if you like reading, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, then, this is probably not the book for you. But if you like Lord of the Rings and Aragon and, The Hobbit, you'll love it, okay? So, Chapter 1, Escape. For almost as long as she could remember, Mayrad had been imprisoned behind walls. She was a slave in Gilman's cot, and hers was the barest of existences, an endless cycle of drudgery and exhaustion and dull fear. Gilman's cot was a small mountain hamlet beyond the borders of the wide lands of the inner kingdom of Anar. It nestled at the nape of a bleak valley on the eastern side of the mountains of Anova, where the range split briefly and ran out, like two claws, from near the northern end. Its virtue, as far as the Thane Gilman was concerned, was its isolation. Here he could be a tyrant of his domain, with nothing to check him. It was a well-defended fortress, though no one came to attack. At the cot's back was the stone cliff of the outwall, the precipice cutting sheer some 1,000 feet from the landrost, the highest peak in that part of the range. Around the cot were walls of roughly dressed stone, rising to a height of 30 feet from a base 20 feet wide. They tapered to 4 feet at the top, enough room for 2 men to walk abreast. At the front were stout wooden gates, which 8 men or a wagon could enter with ease. The gates were barred at night and most days, except for hunts and when the hillmen came in with their big wagons to trade goods, salted meats, cheeses, and dried apples for swords and arrows and buckets and nails. About 150 souls lived there, the Thane Gilman and his wife, who had been beaten to a shadow after bearing him 12 children, of which 5 still lived, and his henchmen and their women and bastards. The rest were slaves like Mayrad, captured in raids in Gilman's youth, or bargained for at the gate, or simply born there. They lived in dormitories, long huts under the shadows of the walls. The buildings were ancient, older even than Gilman guessed, the walls raised in forgotten times by grim northern men to keep out wolves, and worse. Under Gilman the walls were mostly used to keep people in. The small enclosed meadows were tilled and harvested by slave labor. His tables and cloths and cheeses and sour drinks were all made by slaves, and Gilman wanted none running away. His many guards served to reinforce his tyranny, and not inconsequently gratified his own opinion of his authority. Like many who ruled far vaster territories, Gilman was not above the pettiness of vanity. If anyone did escape, there was nowhere to run to. Their most likely fate was to be hunted down by untamed beasts in the forest that stretched below the mountains. And even to this isolated cot came rumors of stirrings in the outside world, whispers of unnamed shadows that haunted the forest deeps, or of forgotten evils that now woke and walked in the daylit world. Grim though Gilman's cot was, these vague stories of horror worked as well as any wall, gainsaying any attempt to leave. Mayrad was still too young to have given up hope of escape, although as she approached adulthood and began better to understand her own limitations, she understood it to be a childish dream. Freedom was a fantasy she gnawed obsessively in her few moments of leisure, like an old bone with just a trace of meat, and like all illusions, it left her hungrier than before, only more keenly aware of how her soul starved within her, its wings wasting with the despair of disuse. It's so good. Okay. When I first read this about 2 years ago, I was at first like, oh, this book is so long, and the language, it's so wordy, and because this is actually, at Barnes & Noble, this was in, like, the teen reads book section, and I was like, oh, well, look at this cover, it looks nice. I do judge books by their covers. I have that on a t-shirt somewhere. But, like, I was like, oh yes, what a nice cover. This looks like maybe a romantic novel, like a really thick romantic novel. And then as I kept on reading it, I was like, this is good. But then like 15 chapters in, I was like, when is this gonna end? And by the end of the book, I was like, is there a sequel? Oh gosh, please let there be a sequel. I loved it. By the end of it, it was almost like I was Mayrad traveling to Pelennor with Cadvan. I'm not gonna spoil it too much, but it really is an amazing story. And it's part of a quartet. Like, it has 4 books in the series. And I think that's all that Alison Croggon wrote. But I've only read the first 2, and I'm working on the 3rd. It's just amazing. I love it. And like I said before, I recommend this book to those who like a challenge and who read like Tolkien or, the guy who wrote Aragon, Christopher something or other. Yeah, amazing book. So I hope you go to your nearest Barnes & Noble or on Amazon or whatever and try this out. It's quite good. Alright, thanks.